Hey guys, welcome back to Mini Dioramas. In the last diorama, I got to build a wonderful little windmill and a little cottage and a wheat field and other things of that nature. So this was just the first test of doing this new series and starting off. So just to reiterate the rules, I've given myself a 20 by 20 space, and I'm giving myself 2 hours to build a creation with vanilla Parkitect, so no construction anarchy, and no Freedom 2000, and no asset mods of any sort. So this one, I'm going to build a Mecha bay or Mecha thing or mech suit of some sort. So that's what I got to build. This was a very interesting build, by the way, so I'll explain more of it into the time lapse, but let's head over to the time lapse now. Okay, first things first is to figure out my color palette for the diorama of a mech or Mecha Bay. Everyone want to call it, probably going to call it Mecha Bay because it just sounds cooler or just sounds more proper. I'm not really sure. Again, so I got inspired by a concept art that I should post on Twitter of what I basically pulled from and then built this structure from there. So again, I'm giving myself 2 hours only to build said diorama, and only in construction anarchy is the way to go. I do, which helps me in these little projects, I do plan a lot ahead, or I pick a certain concept art to kind of just pull from, because I'm not making everything up off on the fly. Most of it is already pre-planned or premeditated in a way. So like for example, this is going to be, I'm going to make some caution chevrons on the floor, and this was a way to try to test it out in vanilla, because you can easily do it in with Construction Anarchy or Freedom 2000 and be very precise with it. But with vanilla, there's kind of a lot of restrictions on how you lift certain pieces and how they either clip through each other or not. So I found a way to kind of I made my own floor entirely on this diorama. So I did, these are the 45-degree cubes. I forgot what size they are. From here they look like, well, unless the window pops up again, I might see it more last time. 53, maybe it was 53. Yeah, 0.53 I think is the magic number. And so I'm not worried about the edges, as you can see. I want to hide those later with another shape piece to make like flooring. So I was very surprised how actually this turns out really well. The only downside is that it's completely higher than a path, so guests will be walking through it with their feet kind of being cut off, so you do have to keep in mind of that. But again, this is just a diorama. I'm not really focused on like making it work with guests. I might consider that in later dioramas if I want to use guests as a prop or something, or a way to make motion on a map. But this is just gonna be a giant mecha robot thing in a bay, and so it's gonna be very themed, very industrial, very military-like, so a lot of grays. Dark green is going to be my main color for the mech, because I decided to make the mech more like an American-built one. So I'm just suggesting that the United States Army had you want to say like a program that made a mech, and so it's going to be very American-looking, green army paint, and the United States, well, the U.S. symbol is going to be on it, or the U.S. And then other things of that nature. So I was just kind of thinking of like the future could be this. They have big giant mechas to fight something. I would think kaijus, because this is kind of like Pacific Rim, because they have your Jaegers and kaijus. And this is kind of like a Jaeger, kind of, because the other inspiration was also to pull from Pacific Rim with their Jaegers and the mechs. And I think I pulled mostly from, what was it, the Cherno Alpha is the Russian one, which is a green one, which is kind of like a tank as well. So I kind of thought of that at the same time. It's like, it's going to be a green tank-like mech, because it's going to be strong and just bulky looking, so a lot of big pieces. So shapes were very useful in doing that. So after basically building the floor, and then now working on the back wall. So this back wall is suggesting the walls of the base that house these mechas. So these can probably be more than one, so this is just a slice of that mecha bay. The mecha bay probably houses maybe up to 12 different mechs. Who knows? But this is just going to be like number 3. I think I called it number 3 later on. So just figuring out my basics of the theming. There's this little skeleton guy at the corner. He is my scale. So at this point, this mech is pretty large. It's bigger than my recreation of the AT. So it's bigger than the AT-AT, which is like mind-boggling that I got this thing this gigantic. But I don't have other things to pull reference from, right? Because I'm building only on this little diorama, so you kind of lose scaling a little bit. So it's always a good thing to hone in your scaling first before you go into something like of this type of project. So the skeleton helps. Before I did that measurement with the walls, I did 10 walls stacked on top and then painted with different colors to kind of help with the measurement. That also helps as well. So that was my first attempt on feet for the mech, and then I went onto a different pattern. So I'm still pulling a lot of reference from that one picture, because the one picture that I found, it was like a Russian mech, and it was on ArtStation. It was very boxy looking, had a lot of like, I don't know, rough edges on it, and just very like tanky looking. It just looks like a tank with legs and arms. That's basically what it looked like to me. So that's kind of what I try to do here. So I was trying to do some different type of leg positions. I want to do like chicken walker type of leg, like from like an ATST. That kind of didn't work out, so you're gonna see me build that and then delete it, which is okay. But again, I have a 2-hour like a 2-hour time limit, right? So I need to like really keep going, because I thought I wasn't gonna make it this one. This was the surprising part. I thought I wasn't gonna make it at all, and I was surprised I was actually to put that much detail into this mech and still have time. I had like 2 minutes left on the clock when I said I was like finally done. Also didn't want to add things that were just not necessary, because building things, I think, for the sake of it also just drags on and just either makes the build look not as more polished, or it does make it polished depending on what you're trying to do, because you kind of have to guess on that, and that's the hard part about it. So basic shapes here. I'm just doing a lot of shape shenanigans. I wouldn't know what to say about like shapes in general. That's why there hasn't been a Parkitect University on shapes, because shapes is just such a big, broad subject that it can be anything, and it's really hard to kind of scale that down to a more cohesive like lesson on what to do with shapes. So the point of this series was to kind of help with that, because I'm going to be using shapes throughout the entire series, because the shapes are just the best piece. They're very universal to change into different things that I want, because they're scalable, they're colorable, and we got a good portion of them. We got like 30 different types of shapes now because of the Booms and Blooms update, so I'm just going to keep going from there. So right now I'm getting the actual shape of my mech. The mech got taller than the wall, which is fine. I was going to make the wall go higher, but I kind of ran out of time at the end, and I'm okay with that, because now it kind of feels like a slice out of a diorama. So maybe it continues more up, which is fine. I don't mind that. So I had some pipes and stuff on that one later. But I had to go figure out the mech's like distinct features. So I didn't want to make a head for it. So the concept art that I saw had like a cabin in the middle of its chest, and so it's more like a small little cockpit or a command center in the middle of the body, more protected than an actual head. And I feel like that's more realistic for a mech than actually making heads for it. That would be so weird. It's like also what Pandora has that with their mechs as well. The little mech walkers that the humans use on the planet. They're kind of built the same, because they're very like big centered, and there's no real heads because the human being has to fit in it. So I thought the same thing here. So like this mech would probably be powered by, I want to say nuclear, and then it's piloted by like at least four pilots. To maybe the gunner, maybe there's an engineer, a driver, and then maybe an emergency driver just in case one pilot dies. I don't know. It just kind of the ideas coming from as I build. I'm kind of thinking of what realistically could happen, because I'm still trying to tell a story of why this mech is here, what it's for, and basing it for like a United States thing was kind of like an interesting idea, because I like the idea of like stretching out some fantasy in this. This is basically a sci-fi basically this point. So there's my little fingers for the mech's hands, which I found really fun to do actually. I like the cylinder idea and the cubes. If I had more time, maybe I would add some more like Grimace details on it. The only thing about Parkitect that I can't seem to do just yet is doing like grime on things, but again, the game has no textures, so it's kind of really hard to kind of imitate grime or distress on pieces. That's why I try to recolor them. I didn't recolor any of this guy's parts. I should have, but again, I'm on a 2-hour time crunch because at this point, I think I'm already at I'm at the end here with all this stuff. So I did disdain the floor to help out with that. That actually helps out a little bit. And then I made some missile silos on the top of his soldiers. I used chimney pieces for some other angled parts. And then this is mech number 15 from the United States. So US is on one of its shoulders, which is I think is a cool idea. And then at the last second I was like, well, this thing's powered by I think nuclear power, so it needs some type of smokestacks or exhaust vents on the back, so it's like some giant engine. So just imagine you just turning it on and it rumbles to life. Might even be coal powered actually, not necessarily be nuclear powered. So it's like some apocalypse world where they're using every known thing to try to build some type of mech to fight some type of thing, either an alien or another country, or just having giant robots. I don't know. So this is going to be labeled to be Bay 10. No, sorry, not Bay 10. What am I saying? Bay 12. Not 12, why? Wow, I'm doing this over. It's just Bay 3. I can read numbers, honestly. I can totally read numbers. So at this point, the mech's done. But there's other things I need to do on the map. So I had I think 5 more minutes left. So I decided just to add pipes and just random details in places just to kind of fill up the map a little bit. And then I also had an issue because I set myself with the floor being elevated from the original elevation, that if you put a car there, it goes through the floor. So I decided to take the truck prop, and I propped it up a little bit, and it was floating. So I was like, okay, well maybe I can make making a floating car. So I'll make a car that's made using hover technology. So that's what I decided later on. So that truck down there is also there for scale, is to tell the person that is looking at this, so this is the scale of this object. So it gives you an idea of how big this thing is, and then you're like, wow, that's even huger than I thought. Because if I didn't put that in, I think you would lose some of the scale awesomeness of this creation. That's the same thing with the cones are on the floor for a reason too. I'm putting things on the floor so you get scale. But I did this in about an hour and 55 minutes. No, an hour and 58 minutes. I got 2 minutes left. So I think it looks pretty cool. Completely different from my windmill, I'll give you that. So I'm going to leave it here, or I'm going to meet you over to the live tour. We're going to look at some close-ups of it, and then I'll see you over there then. Okay, here we are in the Mecha Bay, number 3. I'm just going to show you some close-ups and some additional details that was probably missed in time-lapse, but here's the finished product of a United States type of mech, you want to call it. So some details were probably not added. I probably could have done the back a little bit more, but I think I ran out of time and I wasn't really sure what to add to these parts and things of that nature. But I think that's not the focus. The more basic focus is the front of the mech, basically how it kind of looks. Basically that's the front of it. So we got missile silos here, got some other engine parts, one arm here, this arm, and then we got this floating car. I think it was a nice idea to add this back out here. I'm trying to just suggest it's floating because this ground is still all wonked out. I think there's a nighttime thing. Yeah, I have some flashing lights, so some triggers were added, and then some headlights up here. It doesn't really glow much at night, but I don't think that's the point. The point is that this is more of a more static daytime build. I want to try to see what it looks like with the different angles. Oh, that looks cool. Look at that. Wow, this thing is massive. Man, that thing is really cool. So yeah, I had a fun time building this one. There's some challenges here and there, especially with how default Parkitect works, or vanilla. So I'm pretty happy with the results. So I'm already, this series is just going to be a blast anyway. I have so many other ideas ready to go. I have like a lineup ready to go and things of that nature. So thank you for watching this new episode of Mini Dioramas. And you can support me on Patreon, or you can also support on the YouTube channel as well. You can also follow me on Twitter, YouTube. I'm always on the Parkitect Discord if you want to chat or something. I want to thank my Patreons for, doing the deed, keeping it up, keeping me running, and I'm excited to continue this series. The next one, I'm going to keep a secret. I like to keep them as surprises, so I think it would be the best to kind of just make the series a little bit more fun. But yeah, here's a Mecha Bay. It'll be on the workshop for you guys to kind of explore. If you want to, you can even blueprint it, put in a theme park, make a coaster around it, go for it. That'd be super fun. So I'll see you guys in the next Mini Dioramas episode. Bye.